Hey, listeners, we will keep this quick. All we want for Hanukkah and Christmas this year is you.
That's right, you. A sponsor of the Foretop.
Yes, folks, sponsor the Foretop to get your brand's message into the ear cavities of our audience of wine insiders.
It's the gift that keeps on giving because our content is evergreen.
Just like Christmas. Email Zoe at theforetop.org or reach out to us on social media to learn more. Okay, so Nick, I was at a wine storage facility this past weekend, and it was one of those ones where it's kind of set up like almost like plywood cages so you can see everyone else's wine. And I took a photo for you because I was very curious. Someone was storing their beer at a wine storage facility, and I don't think I'd seen that before. Here, I'll paste the photo for you.
That is beer in a wine cellar. I don't think I've seen that before.
Yeah, so it looks like I'm looking up close at the label. It looks like it's 10% alcohol. I'm reading that it's rum barrel aged in extra malt. So, Nick, what is going on here? So, should we all be aging our beer in our wine cellars? That's my question.
Well, depends. Highly depends. I'm looking at this picture. I can't really tell what kind of beer it is, but generally speaking, people do like to age barley wines and stouts for a bit because it can take like some of the more intense flavors and mellow them out. So like coffee flavors in a stout kind of turn into like dark chocolate, or like richer bready flavors become like nutty and toffee like. And then some people do like as stouts. Generally, stouts break down some of the yeast left in the bottle. It goes through what's called autolysis, and the yeast walls break and release amino acids, and those taste like soy sauce, kind of like coconut
Mm.
aminos is that alternative. And people like that. That's considered to a degree a desired flavor. So you can age all those barley wines. Actually, some people think they age better than stouts, so that's a thing. But it's not like wine. It's like max 5 years. But a fun fact: you have to put a best by date on beer in Belgium, and
Mm.
so the best by date on lambic style beer. A few years ago, I remember looking at one, and the best by date was 2035. So
Oh, wow.
yeah, so some people love to age those sour ales as well.
Well, you had me with autolysis because we talk about that with champagne as well. But this is reminding me of a New York Times story from this week that I was also thinking you could explain to us, Nick, or maybe Ruby, you can explain to me what is the deal with Guinness? Why is everyone talking about Guinness all of a sudden?
I want to start off by saying that Guinness was my favorite beer in college. So it was
Ah.
like really the only beer that I drank. And that's kind of like a big deal. So thank you. Um, yeah, so the New York Times has sort of found this trend that has been going on in my mind for a little while now. We're not sure exactly when it started, but there is a thing online called splitting the G, where people try to drink exactly enough so that the foam stops right in the middle of the word Guinness. And that's what I know about it.
Hmm.
So
Interesting.
it's like a really, really big sip.
So you have to have a Guinness branded glass
Yeah,
or it's like just the
yeah,
Yes.
bottle? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
yeah. Guinness
Got it.
branded glass.
Ah.
Guinness has been around forever, but apparently right now it's the fastest growing imported beer in the United States, which is wild because brands like Modelo have also been growing very quickly. So that's impressive.
Yeah, because Guinness is like super heavy.
No, Ruby, you should know this. It was your favorite college beer. Um, it depends on what you get. There's different iterations of Guinness. Actually, the Guinness you get in Ireland is different than typically what you find in the States, all that jazz. But typically, what you find is like 4.2%. It's like 125 calories per 12-ounce serving, or 11.2-ounce serving if you're grabbing the bottles. So it's lighter than Modelo,
Hmm.
and that's good. I talk to people all the time. They're like, "Oh, I can't drink Guinness; it's so heavy." And then they'll go drink like an 8% hazy IPA that has 2 or 3 times the calories. Hazy IPAs, guys, uber caloric.
Wow. Okay, this is all reminding me, maybe Ruby, you've seen something about this on social media. I don't know if this is urban legend, but supposedly Guinness is very nutritious. At least that's what people say. And women think it helps for your milk to come in when you're nursing. And I did look this up and I did find a study that stated that in addition to the expected antioxidants, B vitamins, and prebiotics, Guinness is actually very high in folate, unusually so for beer. So I guess we should all be drinking Guinness, huh?
I do think
Wow.
most of that came up when there was very little scrutiny over what you could say about the healthiness of alcohol. Because it used
Yeah.
to be like milk stouts were touted as good for women. And oatmeal stouts were touted as good for you too. So
Catherine, I think that you and I are maybe on different, like, algorithms for Instagram because I have never once been given breastfeeding tips. But listen, all I'm hearing is that I was a trendsetter back in the day, and
Mhm.
now Guinness is popular. So
You
there you
started
go.
it.
Yeah.
We should call the New York Times, let them know.
Yeah, so I guess, Nick, does this mean that beer is, like, back in fashion?
unfortunately, we don't see that data yet. It's
Hmm.
still looking pretty bleak.
Michelin-starred restaurants rally behind Kally. We bring you advice for dealing with ice. Washington's glass recycling industry is crushed, and we welcome women who sparkle. These are the wine news stories we're bringing you on your favorite wine news podcast, The Four Top, this week. I am Catherine Cole. I'm here with Ruby Welkovich and Nick Toole.
We got another sustainability story, and not a fun one. Sorry, guys.
No, this isn't fun at all. This story comes to us. Actually, I have to say, my mom sent me this link. Thanks, Mom. From
Thanks, Mom.
yeah, the story comes from Daniel Beekman of the Seattle Times. At the beginning of this month, the Arda, we think that's how that's pronounced, glass packaging plant in the Georgetown neighborhood of Seattle closed. Now, this has big implications for glass recycling in the area as well as for wine production in the Pacific Northwest.
Yes, nearly all of the glass dropped into Seattle recycling bins once went to Ardagh, where it was turned into new wine bottles. Unfortunately, competition from cheaper imported bottles and challenges in the local wine industry forced Ardagh's closure. Now, Seattle is stuck without a buyer for all of their glass, and the city is currently stockpiling it or throwing it away.
In the past, Seattle's glass was picked up curbside, sorted, cleaned, and then crushed by a company called Strategic Materials, and then it was sent to Ardagh to be turned into brand new wine bottles. Yay! But now Seattleans, Seattleans, what do we call
Seattleites.
them?
It's Seattleites. I
Seattleites.
grew up there. Anyway, this isn't just a Seattle problem. Both King and Snohomish counties relied on Ardagh to recycle their glass. And as Ruby mentioned, a persistent decline in the Washington wine industry is a large contributor to Ardagh's decision to close. We have all been watching Chateau Saint Michel, Washington State's largest winery, struggle over the past 4 years or so. They have slashed contracts with growers, they've cut production down significantly. And the fallout of all of this is that as Saint Michel shrinks, the demand for wine bottles shrinks as well, which is why Ardagh is now closing.
Some Washington communities have stopped recycling glass altogether or are sending it as far away as Portland, Oregon. Seattle is continuing to tell residents to put the glass in their recycling bins, but what is happening to that glass?
Well, Strategic Materials is stockpiling a lot of it at the moment. More than 6,000 tons of crushed glass is sitting waiting for a new buyer. And actually, Maine's in a similar situation. Right now, every time I recycle a glass, I don't know, pasta sauce container,
Hmm.
it ends up in a pit at EcoMaine, which is our waste services provider. And then it's waiting for a buyer or it gets mixed in with other stuff, other aggregate to fill potholes. So I know my former employer, Allgas Brewing Company, has to contract with a special recycling company just to make sure their glass bottles get recycled. So this actually hits especially close to home right now because today my wife started a new job at EcoMaine and we'll be working on increasing recycling rates in southern Maine. So I'll be interested to see what she has to say about that, and
Woohoo!
I'll keep you guys updated.
That's exciting.
That is so cool. We have to get her on here. As we say often on the foretop, the wine industry's carbon footprint is driven in a large part by glass. The production and shipping of glass is carbon intensive. Recycling glass helps mitigate that, so this is absolutely an issue for wineries worried about their environmental impact.
But at the same time, glass production produces a ton of pollution, and this is actually also true of recycled glass production as well. A spokesperson for the Duwamish River Community Coalition commented that with Ardagh's plant closed, air quality in the area likely will improve, and this could have positive impacts on asthma rates and the quality of life for folks living around there in that Duwamish River community. So this really is a complicated issue, and we will keep an eye on it.
This past weekend, the foretop Zoe Davis got to attend an event called Women Who Sparkle, and I'm really jealous that I didn't get to go.
Yeah, what's up with that? Why did they have that event in Portland, Oregon? What about good old Portland, Maine, the original Portland?
Well, I think it was Oregon winemakers, but Ruby and Nick, since we all missed Women Who Sparkle, I wanted to go too, but I was out of town. I have an idea. Why don't we phone up some friends and hear about what we missed?
That is a great idea. Let's call up Jean Feldkamp of Corollary Wines, Chris Fade of Analemma Wines, and Melanie Schmidt of Landmass Wines.
On it. Beep boop 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 beep boop boop. Bring, bring.
All right, Women Who Sparkle. I am so excited to see you all. Could you please introduce yourselves?
Hi, I'm Jean Feldkamp. I am the co-owner, co-winemaker of Corollary Wines.
And I'm Melanie Schmidt. I'm the winemaker founder of Landmass Wines.
My name is Chris Fade, and I'm the co-founder of Analemma Wines.
It's so great to talk to all of you today. I'm really excited. How did you guys all join forces for this Women Who Sparkle event?
I think the impetus for the event was actually Melissa Broussard, who is a publicist, and she works with a lot of companies within the wine industry, and we all know her. And she started kind of rallying the troops last year. So this was actually the second Women Who Sparkle event that we just did. We did the first one for International Women's Day in March this year.
Very cool.
So you've had 2 Women Who Sparkle events. How did this most recent one go? What were your takeaways?
Yeah, it was great. There were 5 of us who got together. So the 3 of us here, also Jessica West from Harper Voigt and Allison McMahon from Arabilis. It was really fun to be all together and sort of, sharing the spotlight for the day. We all make really different wines, different styles. We're producing wines from different areas. And so it was really cool to give people kind of a cross section.
Actually, I was going to ask Melanie, you make 4 different styles of sparkling wine, which is crazy. I mean, I think most of us kind of can imagine how one would make a pet nat or even a traditional method or forced carbonation. But wait, how are you making, for example, Charmat in Oregon? I didn't even know the equipment existed here.
The equipment sort of exists here. You do have to import it.
Oh,
But luckily, there is somebody in Oregon who imports Charmat tanks. And it's just been a labor of love. I did recently have somebody ask me, they're like, why are you making all 4? That's insane. And I said, because once you master one language, you want to learn another, right? So the Charmat style it was really the missing piece of the puzzle for us, for just bubble junkies who just can't get enough of it. And it was a really special moment for us to be able to salute with that wine when it was finished. So yeah, always happy to talk about all the 4 different styles because they all have a different place. You have some that have really incredible complex aging profiles that are from sitting on their lees for a really long time. And then you have wines like forest carbonated wines that are really fresh and young, and they suit a broad swath of people. And so it's really incredible to kind of be able to show all different styles, and people can find out what they're into.
Actually, when I came home, I reported back to the team here because I said, how did it go? And I said, well, I got to taste some really delicious sparkling wines. And then I spoke with Melanie about things I don't know anything about. I don't know that equipment. I don't know that process. And so there's a lot of education. Unless you're specialized in that particular method, you probably don't fully understand the process, even though sparkling is a huge part of our identity and what we do out here in the Columbia Gorge. There's room for all styles and all methods. And for me, that was really refreshing to be able to taste the variation and actually talk to the guests on Saturday about the differences, because they were asking, why is Melanie's wine so sparkling and yours has got like a little bit less pressure? And so we got to talk about that, which was actually, really fun. And I love that part of the industry.
and you guys are all in different regions as well.
Yeah, there just hasn't been enough exploration in Oregon in terms of sparkling yet. Like, we're so early on the curve with sparkling wine. We don't know what sparkling from all these different regions necessarily tastes like, because there just hasn't been enough made to this point. And so, as we go and as we all explore kind of our own regions, it's really exciting to try the things that other people are making, because we're just all learning at the same time.
Going off of that, what makes Oregon a center for sparkling winemaking?
There's a few things. So, I mean, for us, particularly the Willamette Valley, we zeroed in on because we have just great, cool climate, sub AVAs. And we have this amazing sort of culture of sustainable farming. And we have all these interesting soil types. There's just so much variation within one small area for us to explore. I think what Melanie mentioned about the community too is really, really important here. We're all kind of learning together. There's a lot of support, and particularly with things like equipment, sharing equipment and sharing knowledge about how to use that equipment has been really good for everyone.
I think one of the really special things about wine is that even people doing the same exact thing in different places, which is actually pretty unlikely to begin with, but if people were to do it the same exact way, there would always be a different expression. And so for us, a huge part of our brand has been built on farming the Atavis Vineyard, which is a really unique site that's almost 2,000 feet at the top. And on Saturday, I was telling people about how bears get into the vineyard and eat the fruit. It's just like in a really wild, natural environment. And, we all have these stories that connect with our audience and our customers in different ways. And there's really room for everyone. And there's so many beautiful expressions that just kind of telling the unique story of each brand, I think brings a lot of strength to our entire industry. And so we're making a sparkling wine from the gorge, but Melanie's wine tastes delicious, and it's from a completely separate part of the gorge.
Yeah, we're getting fruit for bubbles from the Rogue Valley, from the Willamette Valley, and the Columbia Gorge. Those are our three core regions. But we're always looking for elevation, right? We're always looking for a site that's really cold, can hang on to its acids, but that aren't ripping, right? I think for me, one of the biggest differences between Oregon sparkling wine and Champagne is Champagne wines tend to lean a little bit more super dry,
Mm-hmm.
or super, super high acid, right? Because that climate there is just like absolutely frigid and cold. But here in the New World, we're seeing a little bit more sunshine, right? So we're getting fruit that has a little bit of its own personality, but will always have that high acid backbone.
Mm-hmm.
So for us, the way to achieve that is find sites that get ample sunshine during the day, but then at night get to rest, right? And we get to play, right? Like our Charmat style is 100% Chenin Blanc, right?
Mm.
That's extraordinarily rare and really exciting. And what Chris was talking about is, you know, it's just cool to compare different places. You can also make wine right next to somebody, and your wine's going to taste totally different. And I just think that that's really cool.
And there's so much richness to the Oregon wine industry. And I feel like the ethos of the Oregon wine industry really is well suited towards driving the wine world forward with a certain mindset for the land, and how we can integrate with that and have beautiful wines as a result.
I wanted to clarify because we've got New Year's Eve coming up. We can drink bubbles, yours or others, in months other than December, correct? That's allowed.
Yes, please do. Yeah, bubbles are such an amazing food wine. There's nothing that bubbles won't pair well with, honestly. I personally am on a little bit of a crusade to convince everybody that bubbles are just a spectacular food wine.
Love that. Well, thank you, Women Who Sparkle. Jean Feldkamp of Corollary Wines, Chris Fade of Analemma Wines, and Melanie Schmidt of Landmass Wines. Thank you, thank you.
Ruby, I've got something for you. The Santa Rosa Press Democrat has got a wine adjacent drink for you to try. I'm reading this piece by Sarah Doyle about, quote, the local non-alcoholic wine alternative taking Michelin-starred restaurants by storm.
Okay, tell me more.
I am intrigued too because I think I heard wine alternative, and I am excited to hear those two words, and I'll tell you why. I have tasted a couple of de-alcoholized wines, and I do not think these are very good. If I'm going to go NA for the evening, I would prefer to have a beverage that stands out on its own and is not trying to be something else. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm snapping. That's me agreeing.
I am a big fan of like wine alternatives, and there are some really great brands that a cheese shop near me sells. So I'm excited to check this one out.
Hmm.
So this new California brand, Kally, that's Kally, is based on verjus. That's, of course, the tart juice pressed from young wine grapes. And apparently it's served at nearly 20 Michelin-starred restaurants across the country.
That sounds really good. I'll bet it has some nice acidity, but wow, okay, wait. I'm reading here that it's $35 to $39 per bottle for essentially juice.
Okay, that is interesting. I guess they are using wine grapes. They're doing an early Chardonnay, an early Cabernet, a sparkling. And maybe the reason they can charge so much is they're doing a couple collaborations with this very hot restaurant in Healdsburg, Single Thread. I'm sure many of our listeners have heard of it. It's this restaurant that has its own farm. So that's interesting. But as this NA sector grows, I'm just curious to know if winemakers are increasingly going to be branching out into areas like this, like verjus and other juice related beverages that are not just wine with the alcohol removed.
So you don't want to get into like vacuum distillation wines or reverse osmosis or just like boiling off the alcohol. You're not into that?
I'm into a boiled Madeira, and that is it. Otherwise, no thank you.
In case you weren't aware, the agricultural industry relies on a high percentage of undocumented workers.
Yeah, we all know that this is true, and certainly true for the wine industry, where harvest is, of course, seasonal work that requires a skilled workforce, and those vineyard stewards tend not to have documentation. Now, the incoming Trump administration has promised an unprecedented response to illegal immigration, including mass deportations. So, we have been really worried about this, thinking about this, and we were interested to see a piece by Blake Gray in Wine Business this week. It was entitled, What to Do When ICE Comes to Your Vineyard.
Yeah, Gray opens the piece by looking back at the state of Georgia circa 2011. The Peach State passed a strict immigration law that had measures including requiring businesses to use E-Verify to verify worker status, impose strict penalties for fake IDs, and gave police the power to ask about immigration status. And about half of the agricultural workers in the state fled as a result, and the University of Georgia actually estimated that it cost the state $140 million in losses.
Wow.
Yeah. In California, where roughly 81% of the United States wine is produced, Governor Gavin Newsom's office estimates that 50% of the agricultural workforce is undocumented. If Georgia is any indication, a crackdown on illegal immigration and undocumented workers could seriously impact California's wine industry at an especially vulnerable time.
Yeah, and beyond the broad financial impact, vineyard and winery owners right now are really starting to worry about possible severe consequences for employing undocumented immigrants. So, Blake Gray has outlined ways in which employers can protect themselves. And before we get into this, can we just say that the whole premise of this feels absurd? Like, why does our entire American food system rely on workers who are not here legally? It makes no sense. But anyway, we're going to talk about how vineyard managers and owners can skirt some nonsensical laws.
Okay, here we go. First up, maintain deniability.
Hmm.
If you knowingly, in my head that's in italics, employ
Mhm.
undocumented workers, you're in a rough spot because you are obligated to fire them. So you don't want to acknowledge anyone's undocumented status openly, and you want to make sure that the documents you do see at least appear to be authentic. Remember, the law does not require you to be an actual forensic ID expert.
Next, make sure your vineyard management contracts protects you from liability related to third-party workers. That way you aren't in any trouble if a contractor hires undocumented workers.
Mhm. And if ICE does perform a raid, you must, of course, cooperate with document reviews. So hand over those documents. But typically, you will receive a warning notice or a visit before that happens. It also might be a good idea to have a PR plan in place, according to Gray, because if word gets out about a government raid on your business, it doesn't look good.
Also, it's not a bad idea to consult with an immigration attorney now, proactively. Given Trump's promises, it is best to be prepared and ready for some scrutiny.
And last, be prepared to source additional labor. Even if your employees are working legally, they could be scared away when ICE comes knocking if they have friends and family that are undocumented. So we may see a mass exodus of seasonal vineyard stewards, and if that happens, vineyard managers will need to have a plan B in place.
Well, guys, I've got a solution to that. I have a very athletic and outdoorsy teenage daughter who will be needing a summer job, but alas, she will be back in school by harvest time. So never mind.
Oh, shucks.
Yeah.
Well, it is finally time for the question of the week. We recently asked our friends on social media, what should retailers do to make wine shopping more fun? And I answered the question myself. I think wine retailers should have a section with book pairings.
Oh my God, I Love that idea. Let's start a book club. Thank you, Ruby. How about this one too from Boston Lady 56, who suggests wine tastings hosted by wine pros. And then we also heard from Untold Wine Stories, who suggests highlighting new and interesting winemakers.
Some folks got creative. At Dead Rock Stars suggests retailers should have VR headsets that show drone footage of the vineyards. Quote, how cool would an interactive display featuring drone footage of all the single vineyard wines being featured? Definitely a cool idea, although maybe perhaps a little difficult to implement.
Yeah. At Paul Spock has an idea for making customers feel special. Keep things in the back so you could be like, oh, but I do have a few bottles I think you would like in the back. I mean, that would definitely make me feel cool.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one. Well, how about our next question of the week? Ruby, I think you had a pretty good idea, so why don't you put one out there for us?
Yeah, I want to know who is your favorite female winemaker. You can find our post and tag them in the comments.
Yeah, look for that question on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram this week.
Well, for our dessert course, let's bring back Chris Fade of Analemma Wines and Melanie Schmidt of Landmass Wines and Jean Feldkamp of Corollary Wines and see what they would like to share for dessert.
Okay, so recently I have been cooking a lot because the holidays are coming up, and I'm kind of obsessed with Chili Crisp and this book in particular.
Wow.
I love the cover.
Yeah, so James Park is the author. He's a Korean American guy, and he just loves Chili Crisp. And I'm really into this because I grow a lot of chili peppers in our garden. And I think I had 160 plants this year. So
Whoa.
I need a lot of things to do with chili peppers at the end of the season. And Chili Crisp is my, always loved eating it, but now I am loving making it too.
That's so cool.
Wait, so what is Chili Crisp? I feel like I missed the memo.
Oh, Catherine.
Oh.
You don't know what Chili Crisp is?
I don't know
I'm
what.
so excited to introduce you to this. So Chili Crisp is essentially bits of chili and some garlic and a bunch of other aromatics and spices, and you pour hot oil over it, and it kind of fries everything and makes it crispy. And so you get this infused oil, but you get all these little crispy bits. And so you can just use it as a condiment essentially on anything. And it is so tasty, and it just magical.
It's incredible.
So good.
Sounds delicious.
Yeah.
My wife puts it on literally everything.
Yep.
Wow.
When I'm really lazy, I put like butter on pasta and just add some Chili Crisp.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Oh, that sounds so good.
But I hate to say it, I'm not thinking sparkling wine. I'm thinking like dessert wine would be really good with that. Like something sweet and like.
I mean, it's a good A/B test. You should probably try both with your chili.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you. We'll check that out.
So fun.
My dessert course is a show on Apple TV.
Oh.
Bad Sisters. It takes place in Ireland, and it's 5 sisters, but 4 of them are trying to figure out how to get rid of the 5th sister's husband because he's a pretty bad guy.
Love that.
I have 2 sisters. I'm the middle child. And so for me, the dynamic is it's really fun and entertaining, and I can't recommend it enough.
Is there something we need to say to one of your sister's husbands, or is everything?
Yeah. Do you want to talk about that here?
No one's listening. Just between us.
I can recommend going on a bike adventure and incorporating wine as a part of it. I think there's a lot of amazing places to do that, but something that I enjoyed this year was going to Mallorca and discovering the wine region there that's been there for thousands of years. And, there's just so many places that have incredible history like that I find so inspiring. So maybe that'll be what I choose to share.
Ooh, that sounds amazing.
My friends and I used to do that in college, but it was bagged wine, and we were just biking around central Pennsylvania. But yeah, similar.
That's awesome.
It's exactly the same thing, Nick. Thank you
It
for
is,
sharing.
yeah. All the wonderful vineyards of central Pennsylvania.
Love that. Well, thank you, Women Who Sparkle. Jean Feldkamp of Corollary Wines, Chris Fade of Analemma Wines, and Melanie Schmidt of Landmass Wines. This has been the Four Top Podcast. I am our executive producer, Catherine Cole.
I'm our producer, Nick Toole.
I'm media and design manager, Ruby Welkovich.
Keelan King is the composer and performer of our theme music.
Folks, we have a favor to ask you. Please share your favorite Four Top episode with a friend, and then ask them to share their favorite episode with a different friend. It's not an MLM, I swear.
Yes, you can grab the episode link from your favorite podcast platform or our website at thefourtop.org or the link tree in our Instagram page.
Ah, yes.
Yes, yes. Well, feeling very sparkly thanks to the women who sparkle, this is Catherine signing out.
Feeling flat and deflated because this is finals week for my grad program. This is Nick signing out.
From Chili Crisp Central in Brooklyn, New York, this is Ruby signing out. Stay safe out there, and thanks for listening. Catherine, I can't believe you've never heard of Chili Crisp.
I don't
I feel
know
like I need
why.
to send you some.
Yeah, sorry to harass you about it on live on air.